Today on Better Book Clubs, how to start a mother-daughter book club. When my daughter was a preteen, we were lucky enough to be invited to join a mother-daughter book club at our local library. It was a really great experience because at that point in our relationship, we were starting to grow apart a little bit as my daughter became more independent, and having books to read and talk about together gave us a point of connection. So I want to talk today about a few other reasons why you might want to consider starting a mother-daughter book club of your own. Adults often don't read kids' books unless they're reading to a kid, a picture book or an early chapter book. So even though there's this trend of adults reading young adult fiction, I wasn't one of those people. It wasn't something that I would have picked up to read otherwise. But what I found was that we read some really great books together. A few of them were books that I had read as a kid myself: The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, Mary Poppins, Anne of Green Gables, but a lot of them had been published much more recently. And so it was interesting to read the books that my daughter and her peers were interested in reading. It was also a great way to keep us on track with our reading. So as soon as we finished one book, we were ready to pick up the next one and keep going. I find that if I don't belong to a book club, sometimes I slack off a little bit and it takes me a while to wander back around to pick up the next book after finishing one. So having any book club, but particularly this one where we were working on it together, there was also a totally unexpected side benefit to having a mother-daughter book club. I thought, oh, it'll be great, we'll meet some moms and kids, it'll be fun, maybe my daughter will make some new friends. But I was the one who made a new friend. So it turns out that more than a decade later, I'm still friends with one of the moms I met in the Mother-Daughter Book Club. We didn't all love all of the books that we chose to read, but there are three in particular that stick out to me beyond the classics that I already knew, that stuck with me and I really enjoyed, and I'll share those with you now. One of them was the book First Light by Rebecca Stead. Now, Rebecca Stead is a pretty well-known young adult author, and I had actually read aloud one of her books to my nieces and my daughters one summer. But First Light really was compelling to me. It's a fantasy, which is not a genre that I usually choose to read. But it takes place in Greenland, where a little boy and his scientist father have gone, and an entire unknown world is discovered underneath the Arctic ice. That whole idea and the specific detail that Stead used in that book to talk about that world was just so compelling. It really drew me in, and that book has stuck with me to this day. Another book I really enjoyed reading was a memoir called Red Scarf Girl by an author named Jiang about her family's experiences during the Cultural Revolution in China. This was a historic event that we did not study when I was in school, and so I really didn't know very much about it. And I learned a lot from reading this memoir. It was a book, in fact, that I recommended to some of my other adult friends who I thought would also really benefit from reading it. And finally, another book we read together that I really enjoyed was called Chasing Vermeer by a writer named Balliett. It may have even been the book that my daughter recommended to the group because I know she loved that series of Balliett's books. And as you can guess from the title, it has to do with art, with the art world, Vermeer, but it's also a really smart mystery. So it's kind of like a mystery for brainiac kids. And it was just a lot of fun as an adult too, to try and puzzle through what was happening in this really fun book. If you're interested in starting a mother-daughter book club of your own, there are a few things you can do. Start out with your local library. Go talk to them and see if they'd be interested in sponsoring a mother-daughter book club and publicizing it to members of the community. Of course, there are other organizations that you could go to as well: Girl Scouts, your local school, a community center. And again, ask them if they'd be interested in sponsoring a mother-daughter book club if you got the ball rolling. Of course, this model does not just belong for mothers and daughters. It could be any parent and any child. It could be grandparents. It could be aunts and uncles. There are lots of different ways in which you can combine adults and kids for a similar kind of book club.